So Elijah definitely shows us a picture of Jesus, and you're going to see that right now because he was a type of Christ as well as doing all these amazing miracles and all that, but there's a picture of Jesus in his story. Watch this. This is amazing. All right, here we are, Elijah and Jesus compared. So he was the first person in the Bible to raise the dead. Is that not like Jesus, right? Jesus raised people from the dead. Lazarus, the little girl, remember that? And here we're seeing Elijah in the Old Testament around 800 years before Jesus was born, raising a boy from the dead. The widow that he was living with, remember that she prepared a place for him, and he was the first person. So it's an amazing thing when you look at Elijah and Jesus compared. Here's a picture of Jesus raising Lazarus. So Elijah, let's take a closer look at his story. So he ascended into heaven when his mission was complete. Ascended into heaven when his mission was complete. Did not Jesus do the same exact thing? Oh yeah, he did. So there's some awesome comparisons here. It was the great prophet Elijah. That's who it was, who did both of those things. So let's take a look at the timeline here. So the timeline shows us, I love these because I like to know where I'm at in the Bible, and I haven't done these in a while, so forgive me, but let's take a look at it right here. So in the beginning, God created everything, right? So we see Adam and Eve, we see the flood, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Joshua, David, and now we're seeing Elijah. And like I said, he's around 800 BC. And then we're going to see Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Zechariah, Micah, and then there was 400 years of silence where God didn't speak to the people. And then 0 AD, the very first Christmas, the most magnanimous moment besides the cross. So that was the very first Christmas, and then 32 AD, Jesus died on the cross. 35 AD, Paul was saved from being a Pharisee. He gave his life to Jesus. 70 AD, the temple was destroyed. And then at 95 AD or more, it was at least 95 AD, John wrote the book of Revelation, and now we're living in this church age. This is what we're in right now. In 1948, we saw the rebirth of the nation Israel. That was a miracle. So in the end is God as well. So BC means before Christ. AD means Anno Domini, which means the year of our Lord, which was the very first Christmas. So that was a quick timeline. It's good to know where you're at. I think it's important that we do that, don't you? So my friend, that's what I'm going to keep trying to do that in these episodes. All right. So let's look at the next one here. So we see a closer look at the timeline, and you could see right here that Elijah is just after David. David lived, he wrote Psalm 22 right around 1000 BC before Christ. Elijah was around 800 BC. Isaiah will be 700. And then these guys were all around the same time. Ezekiel, Daniel, Zechariah, Jeremiah, those guys. All right. Let's get into it. So 1 Kings 17:22, this is a story of Elijah. And the Lord listened to the voice of Elijah, and the life of the boy returned to him, and he revived. This is the first resurrection recorded in the Bible, life from the dead. Elijah then took the boy and brought him down from the upstairs room into the house and gave him to his mother. And what did he say to her? And Elijah said, "See, your son is alive." Isn't that awesome? And then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord is in your mouth. In your mouth is truth." Remember, Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So Elijah was speaking on behalf of the Lord when he did these things. So when Elijah stood against the hundreds of prophets of Baal, he prayed and God accepted his sacrifice. You know what's really cool about that is Elijah said about a 10-second prayer, and one of the most powerful things happened recorded in the scriptures from a 10-second prayer. You don't have to pray a super long prayer and unload every single thing that's on your mind, especially when you're in a group of other people. Just get to the point, pray the things that need to be prayed, and stop. If your prayers are going more than like 2 to 3 minutes, with other people, that's probably a little too much. Now, by yourself, sure, pray as long as you want. But, and also don't gossip in your prayers. I've heard people do that too. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't know that guy did that. Like be careful with that stuff. God doesn't want you doing that. Do that on your own time with God. You can gossip to God when it's just you and him. It's not really gossip. You're just unloading and sharing everything you are concerned about with God when you're alone. That's okay. But anyway, Elijah gives this 10-second prayer when they were doing this sacrifice, or it was like a contest to see who would take the sacrifice. Would their fake God burn up this burnt offering, this meat that was cut up on this stone on this altar? Were their God was the God Baal going to take it? No, of course not. But the God Yahweh, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he took Elijah's offering in a powerful fire that came down and swept up the offering and more. But we're going to look at that. So let's check it out right here. So when Elijah stood against the hundreds of prophets of Baal, he prayed and God accepted his sacrifice. And here it is, guys. Fire came down from heaven. It licked up the meat that was on the altar. Not only that, it licked up everything else, the wood, the water that was poured on it, all of that stuff. It was an amazing thing. But then 9 centuries later, God accepted a far greater sacrifice for sin and delivered his son by raising him from the dead. Isn't that awesome? That is so good. But after that sacrifice, that powerful moment where he ended up defeating these false prophets and even had them killed, he ran from Jezebel. Here he is. He was way out in the wilderness and he was running from Jezebel, who was trying to kill him, who said that she was going to kill him. And he's depressed. And an angel ministered to Elijah, brought him bread and water. And we know that what happened, angels ministered to Jesus as well, right? We know that. So here in ministry means served, like, helping, serving, right? And that's what he did here. So it's a pretty beautiful thing here for Elijah, right? All right, let's continue. So both raised the dead, both Jesus and Elijah. These are the comparisons. So here Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, right? For Mary and Martha, his sisters. It was a powerful moment. I can't wait to see that replayed in heaven. So both ascended up into heaven after their mission was complete here on earth. Those are the comparisons, you guys. They both left their shroud behind them by the way. This is really interesting, you guys. Jesus, remember, he left his garments that he was wrapped in when he was buried, right? And he left them behind, folded up for a reason, right? And Elijah left his cloak behind for Elisha, right? Remember, it was Elijah and Elisha. They were buddies. They were both prophets. And when Elisha knew that Elijah was going to get whisked away up into heaven, like rapture up into heaven without dying, he's one of the guys. Him and Enoch are the two guys who have never died. They were both of them were caught up to be with the Lord in heaven without dying. And so here you're seeing the same thing. And Elisha knows that. And he said, hey, I want to have the same faith as you. Please give this to me. And his cloak came down as he was being brought up into heaven. Elijah's cloak came down for Elisha to wear, which gave him this faith, right? Well, we see the same thing with Jesus. Check this out. So there's what's called, you guys, the Shroud of Turin. So here's a picture. It's kind of a funny picture, but there's Elijah and Elisha. Remember that he was bald, right? Those kids made fun of him. We read that in scripture. And he was asking and pleading with him for this cloak, and he gets it. So when that fire came down from heaven and Elisha was taken up alive into heaven, he left behind his cloak as he ascended up into heaven, just like Jesus did, right? So John 20 shows us a picture of this. The two were running together, and the other, this is Peter and John, going to the tomb on resurrection day. Remember, the women told him he was alive. And they were running together, and the other disciple ran ahead faster than Peter. Okay, that's really funny, right? God has a sense of humor, and so do the disciples. John's in there saying, hey, I, John, I'm writing this, and I run a lot faster than Peter. I got there before him. Isn't that cool that they have a sense of humor? They're just like me and you guys. They're human, right? Even though God used them greatly, and he could use you greatly and me greatly too, but we're still human and we like to joke around and have fun. So John wrote that. It's pretty cool, right? So the other disciple ran ahead faster than Peter and came to the tomb first, and he stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there. So Jesus left behind the linen wrappings, right? In that tomb that Peter and John ran to that morning, that resurrection morning, and they saw these garments folded up where Jesus's body was laying, right? Now, what does that speak of? I believe that speaks of the Shroud of Turin. Now, a lot of people are very critical about this, but if you do your research, look at it yourself. They had independent scholars and archaeologists and experts in all these different fields that were not Christian, okay? Atheists, a Jewish man who was into Judaism. All of these different people studied it very carefully, and they said there was something supernatural that happened there. Something that was unexplainable that caused this image to burn into the fabric of what is called the Shroud of Turin. It comes from Jesus's time. They said he was crucified. There's evidence of being scourged. There's blood here where the crown would have been pushed down on his head. They took a DNA test of the blood. They said he was a Jewish man. They also found that he was pierced in his hands and on his feet, and he was scourged heavily, like no man should handle that. So there's a lot of evidence, and they said that these burn marks in the fabric. I'll put the image up so you can see it here. They say that these burn marks in the fabric. Here's where the blood was. That was the crown, and there was holes, and there was a hole on his side right here too, where he was pierced. But they say that it would have taken like more than what a nuclear weapon would have done to burn this image into the fabric. So that's what the experts were saying. It's a pretty powerful thing. So here's the blood stains that were there. This is like a remake. An artist did this of what Jesus may have actually looked like. And here's the blood where the crown was pushed down on his head. And they did DNA tests again on that, you guys. And they found that it was Jewish blood. Isn't that amazing? Amazing, amazing stuff, you guys. So just like Elijah's story, Jesus left us, right? His cloak, so to speak, when his mission was complete and he went up into heaven. He gave us something to give you a little more faith. If it takes that to give you the faith, he left it for you. So do your own research, study it, believe in Jesus, trust him, have faith, and he will change your life, my friend, and he'll give you life everlasting. You just have to give your life to him. All right, my friend. Hey, don't forget, click on this playlist right here. How to find Jesus in the Old Testament. You will be blessed by it. So click on this playlist right here, my friend.